CADimensions Tech Tip. My name is Jesse. In this week's tip, we're going to look at using split lines for the purposes of appearances, and we're going to take a look at recalling a previous selection should we inadvertently drop it. Let's take a look at the split line first. Now, it's fairly common practice to create a small extrusion or an extruded cut for the purposes of marking something off as a decal or something like that, where we might have a logo applied to the model. Now, of course, we can bring in a decal as a JPEG or something like that, but a lot of times it's nice and much easier sometimes to bring it in as an actual part of the model, and then we can apply appearances to that. So that's what I've done here. I've used the CADimensions logo. So CADimensions has decided to sponsor the next run for the space shuttle. And you can see I've done that with a boss extrude. So I just have a very thin extrusion here, and I've just applied an appearance to the front faces of these. And again, that's a pretty common technique. I see a lot of people doing that just to get something that they can mark off with an appearance. And it's not actually necessary to do that. What I do in these cases is I use a split line, and we'll take a look at that technique here. So let me flip over to the other side, and we can kind of compare these two things. So I'll use the same sketch from what I had. Slide my tree over. And I'll select this same sketch, the CADimensions logo. And again, most people would go right to an extrude and then try to get this pushed out until it's just barely proud of the surface. And that works okay in some scenarios. In this case, it's pretty flat on that side, so that works okay. But sometimes, this technique even breaks down a little bit because you've got a organic surface on the outside. In this case, it's flat, but I would still lean towards the split line anyhow. Now, the split line tool can be found underneath the curves option right on the features tab. But don't forget, you can always search for these things if you have your search bar set to command search. Split line is the first option down here, and I will choose split line. Now, we have several different modes for split line, but the one that I'm looking for here is projection. I'm just looking to take this sketch and send it to project it onto another face. So what I need to do is, since my sketch is already picked up, I just need to choose the face that I want to project it onto. We'll say this is the face that we're looking for, and we'll say OK. Now here we can see I end up with the same result. However, there is no thickness. It's just projected that sketch directly onto this face, and you can see I still have selectable faces. So this is my preference when working with appearances, and again, from here we can go and add appearances to this. So let's say we want this black like on the other side. You can come along over here, and a medium gloss, that should be fine. I'll drag this onto one of these faces, say face, and then pick up the rest of these or copy and paste. My preference is to just copy and paste these. Control-Shift-C, select, Control-Shift-V. Now again, I've got a couple of these to do, so typically what I'll do is I'll just pin this here on face, and we can keep going. Now that I've got this complete, I can close down my hierarchy, and there we have it. Now, this is a handy technique, but let's take a look and see if this really does make any difference in comparison to just using an extrude or an extruded cut. So I'll move over to my Evaluate tab, and I'll grab my Performance Evaluation tool. From within here, we'll get an idea of rebuild time in the model, and we can see that the boss extrude is about 13%, or 0.19 seconds to rebuild. The split line about 9% at 0.13, so it is a little bit lighter. Now, if we had only one or two of these to do in a model, then it'll make an impact, but it won't be huge. But if each one of your parts has your company logo that you've got embossed on there or something like that, and you're sending those all into an assembly, these things can add up. So this is a technique that you can have in your tool belt if you're just putting those features in strictly for identification purposes. Now, I mentioned we would also take a look at a technique for recalling previous selections. So let's go there. This often comes up in this scenario when I'm marking certain faces for appearances, something like these windows where I've got a fairly difficult selection. You'll see there is a face line that runs through these windows, so I've got a couple of difficult selections to make, and as I'm going through here, I'm maybe just collecting, holding my control key and picking up these window halves. Okay, I missed. Grab this, and so we get these all in place, and maybe on our way over to pick up an appearance or something like that, we accidentally bump the mouse out in free space and we lose those appearances. I'm sure that's happened to you at some point. It's definitely happened to me. In 2015, they introduced a new tool that we can recover that information, and all you have to do is right click once you've bumped your selection and choose this guy here, previous selection. Once we choose previous selection, those selections are now picked back up, and now we can resume with what we were doing with them. Again, in this case, I already have that appearance selected, so I can just paste this right on there. All right, now that tool is helpful in many scenarios, but I find that it does come up a lot in doing this type of work, so I wanted to throw that in and hopefully help you guys out there. So while it is categorically false that CADimensions is sponsoring the next shuttle flight, I hope these couple of tips can still launch your productivity on a daily basis. We'll see you guys next week. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our blog for more great content by clicking on the links in the description below.